Hello everyone, and welcome back to Planet Zoo franchise mode. Now, you may notice, if you've been following along this series, that something has changed, and it's changed massively. The entire main entrance of the zoo, that was the original entryway and original habitats and exhibits, is now gone, and I've built a train station. So originally I wanted to build like a car park and a nice grand entrance, but I thought I don't really want to do that. I think I'm only doing that because I've kind of watched a few other videos and I wanted to do something similar. So I'm doing away with all of that, and what we've got here is a brand new train station. Now, as you can already see, we've put in like a little exotic animal habitat where we're going to put our original insects from the creepy crawly habitat. They're going into there, and we're going to put a few others in various different places in this new entrance area. I'm going to put a shop in there as well, and then on the other side we're going to build some more shops, a little area where guests can sit and have a bite to eat and things like that. And then we've got our main station concourse where people will come in, board the train and go to another part of the zoo. Over here we've already got an information kiosk and 2 toilet blocks. I thought, why not? Let's distinguish it. Let's have a male and a female toilet or something, I don't know. And then over here we've built our African penguin habitat, which I'd been wanting to do since I accidentally bought some, thinking that they would go in our lion enclosure at first, and they kind of just sat in storage. It's not been fleshed out and it needs a bit more work because the penguins are starting to panic. They're getting a little bit stressed because they've got nowhere to hide really. So we're going to look at that another time, but I just wanted to show you what I'd done off camera and where we'd got to. I'm really excited. I think this is going to look really cool. Over here was a bit of dead space that I was actually going to be using as the original African penguin habitat. It didn't work out how I'd planned it, so we've got rid of that for the time being. That's probably just going to be a small temporary staff area for staff rooms and things like that, because I've restructured all of my staff as well and made new work zones. So as you can see, we're just having a look at where the train track comes out to again, and it ends up here on the north side of the Africa habitat. Now at the moment the guests aren't actually going to use this train because they've got no reason to come over to this part of the park. Bit weird, but I wanted to build that in place to get us started, and we'll come back to that another time. What I may do is get rid of the glass frontages on the actual southern part of the Africa habitat. That'll probably reduce crowd congestion as well, because over there by the reptile centre entrance you can see that people coverage there is massive. Just a little nice touch that I thought. I brought the original crocodile sign from the first crocodile habitat and put it here. I just wanted to incorporate that into the newer exhibit as well because I thought that looked really nice, and it's important to look back and remember where it was. And now that we don't have the rest of the habitat there, I thought that was a nice little extra to put in. So yeah, we'll probably get rid of all of that glass there and put it in place on the opposite side, and that'll hopefully drive guests around that north part in the early stages of it. As you can see, I built a little fake seating area here for staff and a little canoe port so they can get in and kind of go out onto the lake. I did a little bit of experimenting with lighting and stuff, and we lit a little bit of this place. And then over here we've got our nice little woodland walk. We fleshed out, ooh, we've gone underground there, didn't want to do that. I'm stuck underground now, I can't get out. Oh, typical. Right, so yes, here we go. We've done a little bit more work on this area here, put some nice signage in for the lions and fleshed out this part of the habitat a little bit more. And there's still work to do. There's still more that I want to do here and more to expand, but I'm starting to get a lot more comfortable with how it's looking and where I want to take it moving forward, because this area is almost finished and we'll be moving on and expanding further to the back of the main part of the terraforming that I did earlier on in this series. I'm also got one eye on the future and where I want to take my Planet Zoo content. I'm probably going to be starting another franchise at some point soon and taking what we've learned from this one into a brand new start, probably on hard mode, not really sure. So anyway, we're just looping back around that train track and where it ends up again. Obviously I'll be adding more stations in the future, and we may do like an express line or something, I don't know. It just kind of depends how it all works and how the mechanics of the train stations work. Anyway, for today's speed build we're going to be fleshing out this left area of the train station and the gardens that are going to be surrounding it. So let's kick off with our speed build, and I'll explain a little bit more about what I'm going to be doing as we go. So this, the dimensions of this building are a little bit off, which is quite disappointing and a little bit frustrating, so you'll have to bear with me while I'm sorting out little bits and pieces here, there and everywhere. So the idea was we're going to cut this all the way back and have this as kind of like a raised platform where we put a couple of food kiosks so that people can come, queue up, get something to eat and have a sit down and a chill out after walking through a garden of some description that I'm going to build. And we're going to put I think it's a hat's fantastic. I'm going to put just a memento. I think would be quite nice here. We've got the information kiosk on the opposite side, and people can like walk over to the other end of the train station to actually get to that. But other than that, I think we just wanted a little shop here to make it look a bit like as if you could go and buy the animals that are for sale here. So it's kind of like a little exotic pet shop, which I think is a really nice touch and something that I've been wanting to put in place here when I build these sort of things, because I really like the idea of having special buildings. Like I have an idea and it's a long-term project, but what I'd like to do is open up a franchise in America and have it as in like it's in a city, like as if we turned New York's Central Park into a zoo, like a complete zoo. I know there are animals in Central Park and stuff, and some of them are in little enclosures and things like that, but if we had this built a city and then used a large plot of land in that city to make a park, and I would build it all on like a grid formation and everything like that. I think that might actually be my next project once we've kind of got this zoo to a nice comfortable place. And what I'd like to do is show you how I actually started this again and the things that I've learned, and we'll do a brand new start. And I've got a little tips video as well if you're looking to get into franchise mode yourself on what the kind of best start is. It won't be meta, it won't be kind of like what all of the big YouTubers are doing. It'll just be what I found to be the most comfortable start for me getting this franchise up and running. Because actually since I started out the way that I started, it's been plain sailing. I've never really ran into any financial issues or anything. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. I mean, it would remain to be seen how it works in hard mode when guests can demand refunds and stuff. Anyway, back to the build. We were looking at how I could actually make this roof work because of the fact that it wasn't quite a correct dimension in the way that it was built, which is really annoying. So I tried putting these along the top and that didn't work either. Neither did this. Everything was just kind of like one off center. It was a little bit uneven. So I come back and I will sort that out at some point, but it also means that this building here is a little bit uneven as well. You'll have to excuse my voice this episode. I'm just getting over something. I think I've had like a chest infection or some sort of issue that's affected my voice, so I feel like I'm a little bit short of breath here, there and there, everywhere. But anyway, yes, so this is us building our food courts and stuff, and once that's in place we'll start building a little deck. And what I'd want to do is, this is kind of like a little woodland walk where guests can come in, go through this woodland walk, and I might actually put some Indian peafowl in here because I think that would be a really nice, you know, the guests can actually walk into the peafowl habitat, they won't stress them out, it'll be a nice big space for them to roam. So I wanted to put in like a nice fountain, build that up there and make a nice little woodland walk so that guests can come in, explore a little bit, see the peafowl up close and personal, get a little bit of food and then leave and come back and explore the rest of the zoo at their own leisure. And it's just a nice little entrance for people to come into and explore straight off the bat. And on the opposite side I had an idea to do something a little bit Grecian, so kind of like look like a ruined temple, and put a few more exhibit animals in there as well, but not any other kind of like habitat based animals. What I could do is expand that entire peafowl enclosure all the way along so that it covers the entire main entrance of the zoo right up to the train station, but I'm not really keen on that idea right now. I'd quite like to have two very distinct separate areas, and next episode you'll see us do the opposite area to the one that we're currently doing. And I do keep jumping back to the train station as inspiration hits me, because the roof needed a lot of work and there were a lot of little bits and pieces that I wanted to do to actually finish this one off. So the fountain, it was just about getting it into a nice place so that it would kind of be noticeable and on a decent footing for the rest of this little habitat that we're building here. And then it was a case of putting some staff buildings in on the opposite side of the train station. And the main thing that I'm looking to develop this time around is better staff management, because I've noticed my animals are getting a lot of like protesters and stuff coming in because the staff just can't get to where they need to be quick enough, and we're getting a lot of like staff backlogs and things, and staff are getting frustrated and the pathing's going a little bit all over the place. So we're trying to redevelop my staff areas here as well, and I'll be rehiring or sacking and getting rid of all of my staff and just bringing in some new blood so that we can actually work out what staff I need and where I need to put them, and then set completely new work zones, actually give them names, rename my habitats so I know which ones are which, and it'll just make everything a lot easier to do. What I would recommend if you are getting into franchise mode and stuff is do this from the off and gradually add to it. Don't do what I've done and just leave it and think that it'll be okay and staff will somehow find their way to it. The game is far more complicated than that, and you need to put a lot of effort into setting genuine work zones so that staff know where they're going and how they're actually going to be working on a particular zone in a particular area. So here we're just building a little extra staff area here, just to make sure that everyone has a place to go, and it'll just come right in here, and we build a little path out joining back up to the main area here. Drop that down a touch and that's pretty much done. Put a few windows in there, not that they'll be seeing much because it just backs out into the train station itself, but again, as you can see, we have to cover up that window, unfortunately, because of the way that the building has been created. What I could actually do is just move everything out a little bit more, but I don't want to do that because I'm quite happy with how this building looks at the moment, and if I was to move it out a little bit more, I'd have to then mess with the path of the bridge going over the train track, and it would be a little bit too complicated. But in future, it's certainly a process that I'm going to learn from, and I feel like one of the great things about having the freedom to create here and to do whatever you want, and also the fact that I've got a little bit of money in the bank and I'm able to actually do this and make my mistakes, it's going to make my future builds a lot better, and I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable with actually using the tools that I've got at my disposal. And one of the things that I think I talk about this in earlier videos is the thing that's always put me off in terms of Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster is getting to grips with the enormity of the tool sets that you have. Can be really overwhelming at first, but now I feel really quite comfortable with everything and I kind of know what works with what, and that just comes from trial and error. You see, when I'm putting these episodes out, is I do a lot of tweaking here, there and everywhere, and actually I could have just left everything as it was and just carried on expanding, but I wanted to come back and touch up on the areas that I'd originally done in the zoo, just to make things look a little bit better, and to actually, the skills that I learn as I go on, you then go back and reapply them in the original builds that you do. So I really like these copper structures. I think they look really nice and they contrast well with the brickwork. They give you like a truly classically British feel. They look like the old red brick buildings that we have here in the UK, that actually quite a few zoos actually end up building in the grounds of these old red brick buildings when there's not really anything else that you can use them for. Stately homes and country houses and things like that, so I think that would be a really nice look. Started putting it in, but once again found that the issues that I'd been having throughout had just presented themselves again, just in different ways, so it got a little bit annoying, and I just ended up going with asphalt roof all the way across the top. It doesn't look great, and I will be coming back and re-editing this in a separate build. You'll actually see that next episode when I completely redevelop this roof and get it looking a lot better than it currently is. But I just wanted to actually just finish it off and get it out of the way so that for now I didn't have to worry about it, and I just thought it would be important to cap it all off for now and then move on with the rest of the build for this episode. So the next thing after doing all of this is to kind of just work out what bits of fluff I can put in to really flesh out the new area. And I wanted to start by doing the bridge because I thought that would be the easiest sort of thing to actually do. It looks almost like an aqueduct that's been repurposed, so I kind of wanted to lay into that theme a little bit more, and rather than doing anything really substantial to it, I just capped off the curved bits with some plaster. This was only temporary, and it was just because I wanted to cover that actual top bit of the exposed brickwork that just kind of looks like cement where they've not really finished off whatever was going on top of it, so I thought putting a nice little cap on would be a good start. Next up, I wanted to put some beams across. These basically act as supporting beams to keep the main structure looking good, and I thought I'd run that all the way along and have them at varying intervals And then this wooden beam kind of thing became more of a structural thing than I wanted it to. But I like it. I like how it turned out, and I ended up using it throughout the rest of the station build. So I thought it was really nice. It adds an extra touch into it. And then it just kind of leaves this area where I can actually play around with some shade. So we put some of these drapes in. And obviously it doesn't quite match up. So we just did a little bit of adjustment to make sure that everything kind of matched up nicely. Like so, just pulling everything in. And then we did a little bit of variation on it there. Moving that one across. So we had this repeating pattern throughout. And then rather than actually doing that, I just got rid of the beams that I had originally and then copy and pasted this one right across like so, all the way along. And then we had this little gap, so we just copied the whole structure and then lined it up a little better. And I did notice as well, we left that one. There we go. And then I thought maybe we'll play around and just move these in a little bit, see if that works any well. But it didn't. I didn't like it, so we put it all back to normal and just had it in this one uniform direction. So it ended up being quite a nice little walkthrough for guests as they're going over that bridge. This is where we carry on our beam. I wanted to bring it across and just pop it down there. You're going to hear, like, excuse me, various breaks in my voice. I'm getting off the back of being quite ill, and it really affected my voice. I didn't have like COVID or anything, but I just seem to have had kind of like a chest infection of some description, and it really knocked my voice. But I didn't want to not put content out, especially considering this portion of my channel is actually gaining quite a bit of traction. So I want to keep up with the content. So my apologies if I'm sounding a bit hoarse or I come across as short of breath or anything. It's there we go. Just made myself cough thinking about it. Anyway, let's talk about the build instead of my illness. So I wanted to put in these lovely trees going all the way up, the nice big cypress trees, and they kind of like frame the entrance pathway very nicely. And then we started putting in a few more bushels all the way along, just to give a little bit of an extra dimension to this and make a nice little bit of undergrowth separating this nice little woodland walkway from the rest of the build. I also think a bit of terraforming might be nice, just to kind of really frame the rest of this structure. I think that's what it's all about when it comes to Planet Zoo. When you start off with this huge flat land, and it's always good to spot where you've got these little pockets of things that could be nice. I tried playing around here with the topiary structures and stuff, but they don't look great, so I may take them out later in favour of the more wild things. Obviously the topiary hedge archways look really nice, and they're going to be kept in, because eventually when I turn this into a walkthrough habitat, we're going to need something to cover up the garish wood gates. It would be really nice if there were a few more options when it came to habitat gates for guests rather than just the wooden one. I think that would be really cool and interesting and nice to see, but we don't have it at the moment. Next thing I wanted to do is frame this fountain with like a nice rockery. So I thought, right, we'll pop around a load in a big circular formation and then sink them into the ground. And of course, when I sunk them into the ground, they just completely disappeared and it was a waste of my time. So we got rid of that and started again. And I thought what would be better is to just go around and pick out some little individual parts where we can have these rocks sticking through a bit, almost as if there was a fountain here in the past that's been demolished and we are rebuilding the structure on top of its original base or something like that. I don't know. That's what we'll go with though, because I think that sounds pretty cool and like a good idea. So I'll just pretend that that's what the plan was all along. We do a little bit of extra fluff here, which I was really quite proud of. I wanted to create like a little campground with a nice fire in the middle of it, kind of almost like an explorer's campground or something, or a little like campsite so that people could come along. I remember when I was a kid, actually, we used to go to this campsite. I think it was called Clennell Hall. Well, I definitely went there, but I may not be thinking about the correct thing. And they had peacocks just roaming the grounds, and that was always cool. And I remember one time I was there with my family. There were my dad, my mum, my sister. We went out for the day and came back to a huge hole in our tent and all of our food just strewn around where we'd camped. Turned out that the farmer just let his goats like roam around the campsite, and they'd eaten a hole in the side of our tent and then eaten all of our food, which was that was really something to come back to after a day walking in the forest. Anyway, so I wanted to make a little campground here, and that's exactly what I did. So I made a little fire, and then realised that there's actually doesn't seem to be a fire effect. Either I've not unlocked it yet, or there just plain isn't one. There's plenty of smoke effects, but there's no just fire. So luckily we do have some new torches unlocked, and I managed to use one of them and incorporate it into this fire. It's a little bit skew and not quite centralised, but I managed to work around it. All I need to do actually is rotate the wood logs at some point. It would be nice if I had like a few like twigs and bracken and stuff that I could use just instead of this weird uniform. I tried sinking that fire pit in, but that didn't work either. So I like the rustic effect of what I've got going here with the little rocks outlining it and stuff. I think that's really cool. And we do have now a single torch just illuminating it and making it look like it is actually a genuine fire that's up and running, which is nice. And we've got the smoke coming off it too. Obviously, might be a little bit of a danger when I have peacocks walking around, but we'll cope with that when it comes. I then dropped a jeep in, and I thought about putting a few deck chairs and stuff in place. Maybe I'll do that at another time. There was just a little shortage of other props. And the one thing I wanted to do was I wanted to create a few like tracks from the jeep, but for some reason when you only have like a 1 radius terrain paintbrush, it never seems to work how you want it to work. So we just left that. Maybe I'll put something else in, like some wood logs or something like that. And that's something for a later date, I think. The next thing was to frame this lovely little decking area. And that was just a case of using these big ornate copper fence posts, which I really like and have been looking forward to incorporating into a build for quite a long time. Same with actually the red brick, because I'd been waiting to get that research for quite some time and could not remember for the life of me where it actually was researchable from. So now that I've found that, really happy, excited to build this train station and like move on with everything. So here we're just finishing off this little fence area. It doesn't seem to look amazing, but it's doing the job. It's another kind of like faux pas with the fact that we've got quite an uneven surface design here that we're working with. But I actually think they're blending quite nicely. It doesn't look too bad where we've got these like breaks where we've got overlapping fence posts and stuff. So I'm quite happy with how it's turned out. And because it's such a like minimal thing, it's not really interfering with stuff and you don't notice it too much. So I'm pretty happy with how it looks. And up here we then have, I wanted to move this all the way across. I didn't think it looked great, like just put up against the wall there. So we get rid of this bit here. We don't need it. And then it just finishes off quite nicely at that wall, and that's where it stops. Next thing to do is put some tables in. Obviously I'm missing path here, so I can't put tables in everywhere, which is a bit of a shame. But again, it offers a little bit of separation. Annoyingly, I'm sure these used to snap, the umbrellas used to snap to these tables and sit quite nicely, but mine aren't. I don't know why, and I'm not happy about it. Maybe I will write a strongly worded letter in the future when I get time. Last thing to do was to put some bins down, and then I wanted to do something with the dead space that I had where I was missing paths where I would normally have tables. So just after tidying up these bins and getting them in a decent placing, put the flooring back in, and then what I thought I would do was make some nice tree planters. So we took some of these big logs, put them in place, and then it was just a case of looking, sinking them into the ground a little bit, and then finding some nice little saplings. We went with these ones, put them in, sink them down a touch as well, and then tried with the mulch, and that didn't quite work because there was too much of an overlap. So then what I thought I would do is have a look a little bit further in and get a little bit creative with things. Tried using a few plant pots and stuff, and then we found these, which seemed to fit perfectly. They had a little bit of mulch in, they offered a nice little overlap, and they really finished off these planters nicely. So we duplicated that, put them all the way across there, and that just about finished this area off. And the final thing to do was to add in a few dividers. Again, I would have loved to have used these limestone platforms, but they are going to serve a purpose for the opposite side of the build when I finally get around to doing that. And then it was just a case of putting in these fence posts. I sunk them into the ground and then designed some new little bits on the bottom for them, just by laying down these posts on a side and finishing them off like that. I don't think it looks amazing, but I do think they do blend in quite nicely, and they offer like a finishing touch of a base to that fence, and just make sure we divide those things nicely. Put a few signs in place. Obviously these aren't quite finished. I'd like to carry on that framing all the way around and really put a nice frame on the actual kiosks themselves, just to make them stand out a little bit more. But we've got a nice basic structure in here with some nice lights and plenty of options when it comes to actually lighting the queues themselves. One more lighting going in, and there we have it. So we've got wall lights and queue lighting, and then we can just put a few. We may kind of experiment with what we can put in on the actual woodland walk itself. Got rid of the bark chippings, and here we go, a very quick transition. As you can see, crowd building up already, but we have added in our peafowl. As you can see, we've got some enrichment for them right there, the little dig spots for seeds and stuff. Over by our fountain, they seem to be really enjoying playing around there. As you'll see, one of them running right across there, and another one. And then up here, this area is actually just closed, unfortunately, so I didn't get a decent shot for you. But as you can see, they'll come through here, get their food, and then be able to sit down or leave and walk back through. There's the doors shutting, and here you can see the masses of congestion we've already got. I think we made the path a little bit too small, so that's something we'll have to work out in our next episode when we do the finishing touches here and finish off by doing the opposite section for this entryway and finishing off our lovely train station. Anyway, I just want to thank you all again for watching one more time. Make sure you drop me a like, a comment and a subscribe if you want to see more Planet Zoo. I've got a lot coming up in the channel. I feel really inspired, and I'm really looking forward to sharing my journey with you in this wonderful game. Thanks for watching. See you next time.